Thanks, Gannon. Right up until this morning, Facebook are still maintaining that they are just a platform. They're not a publisher. They have no responsibilities. They've actually stated in one of the things we get in our responses from them quite often, saying that Facebook has no obligation to monitor its platform for unlawful content, nor can it be legally obliged to do so. And yet here we have a situation where they've appointed their oversight board. So in addition to being their own judge, they've now got their own jury. And this is probably tantamount to a defendant in a criminal case being able to choose his court, his judge, and his jury in order to decide who's going to give them the best hearing. One of the problems I've had over the years with Facebook is they are not regulated by anyone. The traditional broadcast and print media here in the UK and in Ireland are subject to defamation laws. They're subject to IPSO as a regulator per se. And in Ireland, we've got the Press Council and the Press Ombudsman. Facebook and Twitter are not subject to any of these bodies. And yet they are taking all the advertising from mainstream media. They're lifting high-class investigation reports from very, very courageous journalists, but they're lifting them. They're not paying for it. The broadcaster or the newspaper has to do that. And they're sitting there basically saying, well, this has nothing to do with us. We just provide a platform for free speech. Then suddenly, in the last couple of years, this trend has changed around where they are starting to adjudicate, to arbitrate, albeit under pressure and under protest. But of course, the minute they start doing that, they cease to be a platform, which is their fundamental defense from litigation that they've tried to argue from the outset. And what I'm really concerned about at the moment, in very, very recent times, Facebook and Twitter have left themselves open to a situation where they can be accused of giving in to who shouts the loudest or whoever can exert the most influence or pressure in order to encourage suspension or closure of an account. Because we're now got a scenario where Facebook and Twitter are now selectively deciding which accounts they're going to suspend and choose. And that's all very well. In fact, that's very much a good thing if it's a case of a victim of harassment or abuse or whatever like that there. But this is suddenly now developing into a more sinister and worrying trend where they are now, whether it's happening or not, are exposing themselves to the criticism that they may be getting politically involved and that they are cherry picking whose account they should suspend and whose account should be terminated without giving any explanation other than saying that there's been a breach of their community rules or their regulations. Now, no court would tolerate that. No court of public opinion would tolerate that. But that's effectively what's happening at the moment, that, we're clients' accounts and we act for clients on all sides of the political divide, all sides of the religious divide. We act for clients from the United States, Russia, Middle East, North Africa, Europe, or whatever. I mean, I'm an officer of the court. We do not, we don't judge. We just decide whether somebody has got a fair and legitimate case that can or should be brought before the courts. But here I am, having to go up against a very, very wealthy organization like Facebook, Twitter, and indeed Google, YouTube, who basically have got the financial power to sustain any sort of attack. And then with the lockdown that the courts are in at the moment, they're in no hurry. They're in no hurry to respond. And yet they still take these decisions. And I don't know, I can't make any comment on the members of the Oversight Board. It would be very unfair for me to do that. But who has picked them? Who put these 20 people in place? Facebook. They've selected them, and that is not fair to even the members of the board, because already there's a public perception, and already we've seen the outcry over one particular appointee. So where is that going to lead us? I mean, until we get together internationally, this is not something that Britain can do or France can do or the EU can do on their own. We need to get a global response and get a global regulator put in place, because it's the interest of every single country on the planet. Just as much, albeit this is not nearly as serious an issue, but in the same way that we need to get a global response to the coronavirus pandemic, we need to get a global response to an issue, a social issue that crosses borders in a way that we have never seen in history. And Facebook, Twitter, they profit from being able to provide their facility for a price, for a cost, and they earn from it. So it is totally appropriate that they should be regulated. And that's my lecture for today. At the end of the day, there's a school of thought that would say that the social network giants have actually elevated themselves to a position that's far more powerful than government and the courts worldwide. If I could just chip in there as well, Natalie, and I totally agree with you, but they've actually gone to an extreme level. Back in 2018, whenever the new European privacy laws introduced GDPR, Facebook took the proactive step of moving 1.5 billion users' data out of Ireland to the United States, where they saw a greater protection for it. So in other words, all the non-EU data was moved. They just did that. We have another situation where the Irish headquarters, which is supposed to be the European, Middle Eastern and Asian headquarters for Facebook, and if you can Google the company there now, you'll get that in the headline. And yet they recently have tried to argue that Egypt is not part of that, that Egypt, for some reason, is not Middle Eastern anymore. We're shifting it off to, I don't know, Africa or whatever. So what they're doing is to emphasize your point and the point that most of us, I think, are making. There has to be some form of global approach to this, because they are just moving between borders, either for tax reasons or to suit themselves, to avoid culpability or accountability under the law of whatever country they're in, whether it's European law or whatever. And I think that's something that's got to be the focus in the coming months, for governments to start addressing before it's too late. I've got to get them into court. I think that's the main objective. Get them into court and expose this fallacy of a platform. I mean, it's become embarrassing even to talk about it. I mean, I don't understand how it can be given any credibility as to what's happened. Second aspect would probably be, it has to be public opinion. I mean, after the Cambridge Analytica scandal, Facebook invested millions and millions in advertising, in newspapers and magazines to both ingratiate themselves, I suspect, to the media by paying for advertising and by trying to court the public opinion that is very important to them, I think, for a number of reasons. One, obviously, they're dependent on people coming to them for subscriptions, etc. The problem, and then the third aspect is taxation, and they obviously get treated very favourably in certain jurisdictions. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. Every company is entitled to go to the most favourable tax regime for them, and I don't have any objection to that. But there's got to be some fairness all around here. It's all one-way traffic at the moment. All the advertising is going to the social media networks. They've got a situation where they're able to lift, as you were saying earlier, all the journalistic content. They've got everything going for them, and it's like a snowball going down a hill. It's gathering momentum. They're getting more powerful as they gather speed, and more power is being attached to them. And until there has to be an international or a global grasp in this, because while they are able to move around borders, while they're able to argue that it's not, one particular company, it's another company, it's going to make it incredibly difficult for lawyers. It will not beat us, but it does slow matters up. And until we get something like that going, and until we can get public opinion in behind saying, recognizing on the one hand the good that Facebook, or certainly the good facility that Facebook and Twitter and YouTube provide, on the one hand, protect that and maintain that, but there's got to be this balance whereby they are not sitting there deciding as judge and jury who gets on their site, who goes off it, and then they're able to say that we're providing access to freedom of speech. It's freedom of their speech. It's whatever speech they're prepared to tolerate, and it's going to lead to all sorts of complications here in the coming months. And as I say, it's going to be really down to the lawyers to try and get this addressed once and for all.